Hello, BookTube. I have a mail haul for you here. It's a bright, sunny Wednesday. The temperature has only continued to climb for one glorious instant yesterday afternoon. Out on the couch with the bean, I was able to open a window. It was wonderful. Open a window without dying of hypothermia, without freezing to a solid block, and it was wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. I think I will probably be able to do that again today. I'm watching now with a wary eye. I was ignoring news of long-term forecasts of return of cold, but I can't anymore. It's like looking at a train wreck. I can't avoid looking at it, so I'm now scrutinizing the data, and I don't see it. I see a small dip, but no precipitation and nothing returning to day after day after day where the daytime high is 32 degrees Fahrenheit. Is freezing. I don't see that coming. I just don't. Maybe that's wishful thinking. But one way or another, it is delightful to have fresh air coming through those windows. There are new windows all over the place here. For 150 years, this place had rope-pulled, counterweighted windows that had been installed when the Kaiser was in office. They didn't work. They rattled and shook. They needed to be propped up with wooden boards. They didn't behave in any way, and they, needless to say, didn't insulate at all. And that's not true. All the windows are now different. All the windows now are completely improved. You can lift them open with one finger, and they stay right where you put them. It's delightful, wonderful, and they're better insulated. And they're also the type where you flick two tabs, and you can pull the pane in to clean the outside. I haven't had a chance to do that yet because it's been winter, but that's delightful too. So it's been nice to get some use out of those windows, other than just looking through them at how cold the world is. But I've got some packages here. I've got a small package, a small box, and a big box. So I suspect that rule number 1 is involved in this mail haul in the way that it was not yesterday. But maybe that's for the good, because maybe rule number 1 has changed. Perhaps rule number 1 has changed. So let's look at this first package and see if I'm right. This is a tiny little package. I think there's a mass market paperback in here, and I don't get the impression that this is sent from a publisher. Publishers do sometimes send me mass market paperbacks, but I don't think so. Let's see here. Let's see what we have here. Okay, all right. Okay, no, this is not sent from a publisher. This is sent from one of you. Oh, how wonderful. Okay. Wow. What kind of a packing job is this? Good Lord. This is done with a vacuum packer. This is an old mass market paperback. A couple of you that I know, of you I know are going to look at this and nod right away because you'll recognize it. This is by R.A. McAvoy, and it is Raphael, with that inimitable 80s cover art. I do not have a copy of this. I don't, at the moment, have... This is the 3rd volume in a trilogy that R.A. McAvoy did that is totally wonderful. Just totally wonderful. It's set in the Italian Renaissance, and it stars a young man named Damiano, who, when we first meet him, is the apprentice to a sorcerer in a small Florentine satellite town, and has some sorceress abilities of his own, which R.A. McAvoy clearly indicates are just what science fiction novel would call mental or psionic powers that are just in the trappings of magic. Because that's what's understood by the time period, with a couple of exceptions. Number 1 is that Damiano's dog talks, which endeared me to this series right away. But another one is that periodically Damiano talks with an angel. He talks with the Archangel Raphael. This is not... The cover here is not in reference to the artist. It's in reference to the original, and also not in reference to the Teenage Ninja Mutant Turtle. This is the original item, Raphael. And I don't know. I've read Damiano so many times, and I don't know that there's a covert psionic explanation for that. I think it's a wonderful blend, in other words, of neat stuff that could work in a science fiction story with fantasy elements. And tragedy strikes, and Damiano has to embrace his destiny as a sorcerer in his own right and also go out on the road with a horse and the talking dog, and he eventually meets a fellow sorceress who is of the Sami people in Finland. And that makes it even more interesting. And there's an enemy, of course. There's an enemy because Raphael has an enemy. I bet you can guess who that is. If you've read Milton, you can guess who that is. You can see him on the cover of this book. And at one point in the story of what ended up becoming a trilogy, Raphael becomes a mortal man, becomes a mortal being. And that's what this book is about. This is the third and concluding book in the series. I'm not 100. I've never actually tried it. I will, thanks to this gift, I will try to read this as a standalone book. I've never done it before. I've only read this as the third part in a trilogy, coming to it with all the momentum of the first two books. That first book, Damiano, is amazing. And the second book is amazing too, and so is this one, but that first one really has some moments of wonder in it. I don't know why. A Trio for Lute, I think, is the name of the whole trilogy, and I have no idea why the science fiction community did not embrace this, or maybe it did, and it's just a publishing thing. One way or another, it's not in print anymore. There used to be a mass market paperback of the 3 books in one, that for some odd reason had the actor Jürgen Prochnow face on the cover. He's not in the books, I promise, but he was at the moment that book came out. He was had recently starred in a movie called The Seventh Seal, so maybe that's why. I have no idea. One way or another. There was a mass market paperback that I had for a long time and really liked. I don't at the moment. I would grab it in a heartbeat if I did. And there was also a science fiction book club, 1 volume of the first 3. I keep seeing the first 3, but there weren't any others. Damiano doesn't appear again after this trilogy, as far as I know. R.A. McEvoy is still writing, or was just recently still writing. And all the books are wonderful. Tea with a Black Dragon, wonderful. All the later books in series are really, really good. This is a smart author. But I think Trio for Lute is a classic fantasy trilogy, along the lines of lots of other classic fantasy trilogies that are reprinted and are remembered. So I'm not really sure what the blank spot here is. One of you must have heard me praise that trilogy and sent me the 3rd book. I don't have the first 2, and I don't have the trilogy in 1 volume, but that's fine by me. I will take the 3rd book anyway and just revisit it. Take a wonderful chance to revisit a book that I admit I've only ever read with forward momentum in the past. Now I get to read it just as a standalone book and see what I can appreciate. So that's great. And you'll notice I did not say that it violated rule number 1. All will be made clear. Believe you me, we have I touched an invoice. We will have occasion to make rule number 1 clear. So what is this next one? This next one's actually from a public. Oh, okay. All right, we've seen this already. This is from the great folks at Princeton University Press, and this is a series that they do where they prize an ancient author, a classical author, and by this I mean the actual definition of the term, not BookTube's idea of classics is anything that's older than the speaker. But in the actual sense of the word, it's the classics of ancient Greece and Rome. And the folks at Princeton University Press have a series of books that I guess must be pretty popular. They're certainly good as like impromptu gifts for bookish people, where they prize an excerpt from a classical work or a whole classical work out of its ancient world context, give it usually a new introduction, sometimes a new translation, and repackage it for the present day in explicitly instructional terms. How to run for office, how to corrupt a country, how to die well, that sort of thing. And on one level, I tend to a little bit disagree with that packaging because it turns these things into lesson manuals and by implication says there's no way that you would read them if you weren't learning something from them. You couldn't read them to enjoy them. And in a lot of cases in the books in this series, that's not true. And does them a little bit of a disservice. But I will happily forestall that objection in order to get these authors back in bookstores, even this current author. This is selected and translated by Michael Fontaine, and the book is called How to Tell a Joke, An Ancient Guide to the Art of Humor. And the author, believe it or not, is Cicero. And there he is with a mic at an improv club. Cicero was almost anatomically humorless. But here he is being repackaged in How to Tell a Joke. Can you believe that? It's not Ovid who's being asked here. It's not Catullus or Propertius, who knew how to tell a joke. It's not Plautus. It's Cicero. So let's see what this book has to say for itself. Why are we picking a humorous git who very much deserved his gruesome fate? Let's see. Can jokes win a hostile room, a hopeless argument, or even an election? Ah, the hopeless argument. It might be that. Cicero did often effectively use very elaborately staged punchlines in his court appearances. He was a lawyer and often would build a case against someone to such a point of studied absurdity that the audience was laughing. I don't know if that makes him a comedian. I don't think it does. It's entirely possible for someone to do that without having any sense of humor themselves. But again, I'm not prevailing. Let's see. You bet they can. According to Cicero, and he knew what he was talking about. He almost never knew what he was talking about. I won't interrupt again, I promise. One of Rome's great politicians, speakers, and lawyers, Cicero was also reputedly one of antiquity's funniest people. After he was elected commander-in-chief and head of state, his enemies even started calling him that stand-up consul. How to Tell a Joke provides a lively new translation of Cicero's essential writing on humor alongside that of the later Roman orator and educator Quintilian. Oh my God. The result is a timeless practical guide to how a well-timed joke can win over any audience. As powerful as jokes can be, they are also hugely risky. The line between a witty joke and an offensive one isn't always clear. Plenty clear in the 21st century. I said I wouldn't interrupt, didn't I? Cross it and you'll look like a clown, or worse. Here, Cicero and Quintilian explore every aspect of telling jokes, while avoiding costly mistakes. Presenting selections on humor in Cicero's On the Ideal Orator and Quintilian's The Education of the Orator, complete with an enlightening introduction and the original Latin on facing pages. How to Tell a Joke examines the risks and rewards of humor and analyzes basic types that readers can use to write their own jokes. You're going to use Cicero, or worse, Quintilian, as a guide to how to write jokes? Well, see, this is what I was talking about. This is why a decision to package the literature of the classical world in educational terms, in pedagogical terms. You're not going to read Quintilian for any of the things that Quintilian wants you to read him for. Instead, you're going to read him for this, to get something out of it, to learn something that you can apply to your own life. And a strength of that is that it's very engaging. A weakness of that is that it takes as its operating assumption that the literature of the classical world has no merit other than pedagogical. And I don't like that, especially in a case like this where it goes so horribly awry. I mean, these are two of the least humorous people in the entire world of antiquity. And you're going to them as opposed to almost anybody else? Hell, even Julius Caesar was funnier than Cicero. What have we got here? So we have... Okay, Marcus Tullius Cicero, selected, translated, and introduced by Michael Fontaine. Who is Michael Fontaine when he's at home? He's a professor of the classics at Cornell University. Okay, so great. So, my objections aside, we have a new translation, a new introduction, and new notes by a trained classicist of Cicero. Yes, it's selections, not whole works, and yes, it's cast in an odd way in order to coincide with this series, but nevertheless, it's a new translation of Cicero by somebody who knows what they're doing in a bookstore. That is a cause for joy. And I also want to see if I can maybe quickly find it out here, if the Quintilian is also a new translation by this same person, because that would be incredible. That would be absolutely incredible. If under a premature as fantastic as that of Princeton University Press, we're getting a new translation of Quintilian in bookstores in 2021, that would be... okay. What do we do here? Does this tell us? I don't know. I'm trying to find out quickly, without boring you, whether or not this is a new translation of Quintilian as well as Cicero. I suppose I could just write to Princeton, but I'd rather find out for you. Well, it's not divulging itself to me right away, but I'm almost convinced that it is, which would be incredible. If that were true, that would be incredible. So, but one way or another, you're getting Cicero strained through the lens of humor here. That's going to be interesting in its own right. I'll be interesting to see what Michael Fontaine makes of all of that. I have no idea how this series works. Does he get tapped for it, or does he propose it to them? One way or another, these books. The thing I love most about them, the thing that quells all of my little carping objections, is that this is bringing classical authors that I know like the oldest of old friends back into the world with facing page bilingual presentation and new translations and new notes. That's awesome. That's absolutely awesome. To think that if I'm right, and this is a new translation of Quintilian, from a major university press in bookstores, being bought as an impulse item, that is just joyful. That's a joyful thought. So there you go. That is the one non-rule violating book. That was from a publisher. Then we have this huge thing. It's a gigantic box of that was sent from one of you. Obviously. And we're going to see what this is. Goodness gracious. My feng shui just doesn't work. No matter what I do, it just doesn't work. I need like 10 step stools here to have a place to put everything. All right, so what have we got here? There's a card. It's a box full of books. But there's also a card, and the card is too good not to share with you. It's called Literary Birds of the British Isles. A tree sparrow engrossed in a Ruth Rendell mystery. A yellow wagtail reading Martin Amis on a Kindle. A collared dove with Sylvia Plath poems. Purple sandpiper enjoying a Hilary Mantel novel. Thank you so much. That is awesome. So what have we got here? Okay, first thing off, we have British sweets. This is all the way from the UK. Jelly babies. So whoever sent this, either they have coincidentally struck gold, or they have been memorizing my videos, because not only are these things called bassets, and I once had a basset hound, who I had her late enough in life so that she actually appears in the first year of my videos here on this channel. But also, these are jelly babies. And is it possible that someone who had been watching my channel closely enough, not only to know that I had a basset hound, but to know that my favorite doctor is the fourth doctor, who was fond of jelly babies? One way or another, that's pretty bullseye. That's pretty spot on. Except that, that may be changing. The more I think about it, the more I reflect, the more I rewatch, the more I think my favorite doctor might be Peter Capaldi. And also, I was never, with the Tom Baker doctor, I was never willing to say not only is he my favorite doctor, but he's the best doctor. I was willing to say only that he was the doctor who introduced me to the whole Who universe. But Peter Capaldi, I am starting to think not only is he my favorite doctor, but he's the best iteration of the character. Maybe the one who should have died. And according to a lot of Doctor Who fans, the show died anyway when he regenerated. We won't get into that kettle of fish. So what have we got here? The whole box of books. We have from Edward Wilson Lee, The Catalog of Shipwrecked Books, Young Columbus and the Quest for a Universal Library. And it coincides with a new book that I just got. So maybe the person who sent this knows that. I just got a book about Columbus's son, who wanted to make a universal library. And this is a very much more popular book about the exact same subject. The first major biography of the pioneer of modern libraries. Although forgotten to most, Christopher Columbus' illegitimate son Hernando led an ambitious life. Like his father, he was an obsessive visionary, but his passion was for information. He compiled a dictionary, created a cosmological encyclopedia of Spain, began Europe's first botanical garden, and oversaw the creation of the first modern world maps. But his legacy is his grand project for a library containing a copy of every book in the world. Is it possible that this is the same book? No. Because the book that I got is from an academic press. I don't have it with me. I read it just recently, but it's in the other room. So I think this is just another book on the same subject. But the subject fascinates me. I believe I had this once upon a time, but fantastic. All right, we're off to a fine start. Feng Shui is a nightmare, though, because I have no idea where I'm going to put these things. Let's continue on here. Next one is The Adversary by Emmanuel Carrere, the true story of a monstrous deception, in these great UK covers. On the Saturday morning of January 9th, 1993, while Jean-Claude Roman was killing his wife and children, I was with mine in the parent-teacher meeting. With these chilling first words, acclaimed master of psychological suspense begins his exploration of the double life of a respectable doctor, 18 years of lies, 5 murders, and the extremes to which ordinary people can go. And all of that is done in an old typewriter font. And it has a blurb from Junot Diaz, who's a great writer, and also Laurent Binet, the author of HHH, which was a weird novel that I loved. Also, a couple of other things that I really loved. Okay, great. What else is in here? It's a box full of books. Oh, man. Okay, we have the Oxford World Classics of She by H. Rider Haggard. There she is. There's Ayesha herself, a mysterious, reclusive tribe that worships an immortal woman. She who must be obeyed. A classic story. Rider Haggard is, of course, gone now completely, and no one will ever revive him. He is preemptively canceled for his colonialism. But I love him, and I think a lot of other people do too. So, oh, wow. Oh, okay, how lovely. This is a little hardcover called How Should One Read a Book by Virginia Woolf. Oh, man. No pub sheet, of course, here, but this is just a couple of long essays on reading by Virginia Woolf with an introduction. Incredible. That is going to get read today. Some Penguin Classics. For the Penguin Classic wall, we have a Journal of the Plague Year by Daniel Defoe that has shot up the Amazon ratings in 2020 for obvious reasons. This is a weird book. A lot of what Defoe wrote was really weird. Weirder than we think. Weirder than it looks on the surface, and this is one of them. It was a very, very strange fellow. Had a really good biography about 30 years ago, and is due for another one. Even bigger. An even bigger biography. But this is in perfect condition, like the day it was made. So fantastic. Another Penguin Classic here. Oh, The First Man in the Moon. H.G. Wells. With an introduction by China Mieville. Fantastic. Okay, I don't think I have either one of these as Penguin Classics. Then we have... what is this? Oh, it's lovely. This is one of those red spined vintage paperbacks. Vera by Von Arnim. Is that the same Von Arnim that wrote Enchanted April? Yes, it is. Elizabeth Von Arnim was born in August of 1866 in Australia. Okay. She published Elizabeth and Her German Garden anonymously in 1898. Let's see here. Her tutors were Hugh Walpole and E.M. Forster, were tutors to her children. And that book was followed by many novels, including Vera, this one, in 1921, and The Enchanted April in 1922. Okay, I don't know this book. I don't know this. I am not a completist of this author at all. I love Enchanted April, but I don't know this. Lucy Entwistle and Everard Weems are both reeling from recent unhappiness when they meet and swiftly fall in love. Lucy is Weems's sweet girl, and to Lucy, Everard is the whole world. The only blot on Lucy's happiness is the shadowy figure of Weems's first wife, Vera, who died in mysterious circumstances. But it is not until the happy couple return home and begin their life of wedded bliss that Lucy really begins to wonder what did happen to Vera. What a lovely cover. Fantastic. Wow. So a semi-revered canonical author, a book I've never read. How wonderful. All right, what's this next one? Oh, okay, this is another murder mystery. Oh, this is lovely. The person who sent this is no doubt watching. You should not have gone to this much bother. And yet, it aligns perfectly with the new rule number 1, which we will get to. This is The Case of the Gilded Fly by Edmund Crispin. I have a couple of Edmund Crispins, but nothing in a trade paperback, certainly nothing this lovely. This is a Gervais Fenn mystery. Look at how pretty that cover is. That is just wonderful. What have we got here? A pretty but spiteful young actress with a talent for destroying men's lives. Is there any other kind? is found dead in a college room just yards from the office of unconventional Oxford Don Gervais Fenn. The victim is found wearing an unusual ring, a reproduction of a piece in a British museum featuring a gilded fly. Is this a clue? What do you think, Einstein? As they delve deeper into her unhappy life, the police soon realize that anyone who knew the girl would willingly have shot her. And can Fenn discover who did shoot her and why? And tantalizing, all of these reprints of Edmund Crispin look this beautiful. So the person who sent this, get cracking. I want all the others. Unbearable, aren't I? Oh, let's see what's next in here. Oh, look at this. Oh, this is cool. Wow, the person who watched this really may be watching my videos with close attention, because this is designed for this shelf right here. This is Theodore Dreiser's gigantic book on American tragedy, in an old Signet classic. So it will go right up on that shelf. And it's a weird story. Dreiser's a weird author. I think he's largely gone. I think he's definitely fading. I don't think anybody has to read him anymore. I don't know any people who read him for pleasure anymore. He's not all that pleasurable to read. His nonfiction, needless to say, I'm going to say, his Big Book Newspaper Days is terrific. Absolutely terrific. As an evocation of his journalistic life and of the journalism of the time. This is a great, huge novel. And Dreiser, it's the story of a feckless young stand-in for the author as a youth who goes through life and rises in the ranks of society, eventually gets entangled in crime. There's a long, long court sequence in the book, and Dreiser is a lot like a stillborn Thomas Wolfe. You get Thomas Wolfe novels. He throws everything but the kitchen sink into the narrative. He is what an obnoxious later generation referred to as a maximalist author, where you get everything, and all of it is a rhetorical tour de force, and it's up to you to sort it all out. It's as far away from a close Hemingway-style hewing to a plot as you could get. And Dreiser does the same thing, only without a whole lot of the glowing genius of a Thomas Wolfe. So this is a long book. It's like 900 pages long. Yeah, it's 860 pages in this Signet translation. Yeah, translated from the Polish, I would almost say, but no, this is not Joseph Conrad. No, it just feels like it's translated from a very different language. But it's instead, I guess there's a way to say that it's bad, that it's a bad reading experience. I myself think, I give Dreiser the benefit of the doubt. I myself think that the more you go into books like The Financier or The Titan, the more engrossing they get. Despite the author's narrative style, despite that, and then you end up kind of liking that. I think the same thing could be said for Thomas Wolfe or even Thomas Mann. you have to give a little credit to these authors who have a big story they have in mind to tell, and not really fault them for the narrative tics. Not so much, anyway. I don't have a copy. I don't have any Dreiser. Until now, I had no Dreiser. This is going to go right up on that shelf, but I wonder if I should block off the time to read an American tragedy again. Should I? Oh my, that's a lot of time, even for me. Oh, okay, all right, here we have another Red Spine vintage paperback. Oh God, I haven't read this book in 30 years. This is The Tenets by Bernard Malamud. That's an apartment building that you can see there. This is an apartment building, the owner of which wants to evict its tenants and raise it, gentrified is the word we would use now. And the book, both the tenants are working on books, just endlessly typing away at books that you get the strong impression are never meant to be done. They're just psychological props. And one of the authors is black and the other of the authors is Jewish. And the novel springs from just a roiling kind of ethnic and cultural tension that was happening at the time that this was written. This is in the 60s? Is that right? 1971 was the original publication date of this. And it ends up being just brilliant. It has a weird kind of biting, thoroughly uncharitable humor that runs throughout it. And this is why people who like Malamud, I don't like Dreiser. I don't know many people who do read this author anymore. But people have in the past frequently told me that this is a funny author. And I know him from The Natural. And I just have never seen it. I've never seen the humor that fans tell me is there. And often this book has come up. I read this much closer to 1971 than now. And well, it's just unbelievable that 1971 was 50 years ago. That just doesn't seem possible. That just doesn't seem possible. But well, anyway, I maybe it's possible that I missed the humor here, and the weird, tentative ways that those two main characters start to make rapprochement with each other. It's possible that in other words, this is one of those times where I see an older book, something that I've read before, and I think I just recently on this channel, like 2 years ago, had the same thought about Naguib Mahfouz. The same thing where I look at this and my knee-jerk reaction is not, I know what my reaction to this book is. Instead, my knee-jerk reaction is, it might be time to read that again. And here it is. In an absolutely beautiful new vintage edition sent to me by one of you. Okay, what else have we got here? It's just a box full of books. We have, okay, The Surgeon of Crowthorne. Crowthorne by Simon Winchester. This is a tale of murder, madness, and the Oxford English Dictionary. Did this have this title in English? This did, right? It had a different title in English. See, this paperback, this is a Penguin trade paperback, but it's a UK Penguin. And it has blurbs from, for instance, the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times, but I don't think that's what this was called in America. Maybe not. One way or another, that is the weirdo and obsessive who created or did a large work for the creation of the Oxford English Dictionary. Caught in a Web of Words. Great book on the same subject. When a mysterious surgeon wrote to brilliant lexicographer James Murray offering help in compiling the first English dictionary, there began one of the most bizarre and intriguing literary friendships in history. For Dr. Minor of Crowthorne was well known as being one of Murray's most valued contributors, was also a homicidal lunatic confined to Broadmoor Asylum for murder. Constantly plagued by frightening delusions, Minor's fragile grip on sanity was only saved by his work for Murray. I feel certain this book has a different title in the United States, but one way or another, I'm overjoyed to have it. Overjoyed. And then the last one's big. Oh, look at that. Oh, this is lovely. Look at how beautiful this is. This is a UK Picador. Is it UK? It has to be. Yeah. This is A.J. Cronin's book, The Citadel, about a young doctor and the weird, totally corrupt world that he encounters in the pre-modern era of modern medicine. How is this book going to describe itself? The book which inspired the creation of the NHS. I didn't know that. When newly qualified Dr. Andrew Manson takes his first post in a Welsh mining community, the young Scot brings with him a bag full of idealism and enthusiasm. Both are soon strained to the limit as Andrew discovers the reality of performing operations on a kitchen table and washing in a scullery, of unspeakable sanitation, of common infantile cholera and systemic corruption. There are no x-rays, no ambulances, nothing to combat disease and poverty. I read this book. I've read everything by this author, but I haven't read it in a long time. Of course, it grinds you down. It's a pre-modern world medical novel along the lines of a big novel that sold really well and is now completely forgotten. The novel was called Not as a Stranger, but I'm lost to remember the author's name. That book was so popular, and I'll never remember. I'm terrible with authors' names anyway, but Not as a Stranger was along the same lines. Another big, sprawling, taste of life novel about medicine, about doctors. Fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. Wow. Okay, well, there's your mail haul then. So we have, first of all, a box full of books. We have The Citadel by A.J. Cronin. We have The Surgeon of Crowthorne by Simon Winchester. We have The Tenets by Bernard Malamud. What of the mass market there? We have The Case of the Gilded Fly by Edmund Crispin, part of this whole series of paperback reprints. We have Vera by Von Arnim, the author of Enchanted April. We have The First Man in the Moon by H.G. Wells, with an introduction by Chena Miéville, who wrote Perdido Street Station. We have Journal of the Plague Year by Daniel Defoe. Those are two Penguin classics. We have She by H. Rider Haggard. Oh, Okay, the Adversary fell. I'm not going to grab it because it fell all the way to the floor. The catalog of shipwreck books about Christopher Columbus's son and his desire for a universal library. Also the subject of a new book from Princeton University Press. We have How Should One Read a Book by Virginia Woolf, prizing out one of her little things and putting it in a book. We have An American Tragedy by Theodore Dreiser in a Signet classic. We have How to Tell a Joke by that laugh riot, Marcus Tullius Cicero, and we have Raphael by R.A. McAvoy, the third book in a trio for loot. So this is a mail haul entirely composed, almost entirely composed of books sent to me by you. And you might think that I would be railing now about the contraventions of rule number 1, but rule number 1 has changed. Instead of, don't send me a book. Rule number 1 on this channel has always been, don't send me a book. I know I'm surrounded by them, but it'll waste of your time and money because it'll be a book that I already have or a book that I don't want, and you'll be wasting time and money to send it to me, so don't do it. For years on this channel, I've been saying, don't send me a book. If you want me to get a book, then call the Brattle Bookshop in Boston and swear out a store credit for me. But I'm changing rule number 1. We must adapt, we must move with the times, and almost every contravention of rule number 1 that we've seen in the last 2 months has been a bullseye, a book I don't want to give up. So rule number 1 on this channel is now, send me the books. Send me all the books. All of them. The next time you leave your house to go to your little library sale or your charity shop or your Oxfam shop and you see books, I want you to get 1 book for yourself and 15 books for me. I want you to put those in a box and mail them to me. All the books. Rule number 1 on this channel is now, send me the books. All the books. So there you go. I'm going to retire with my literary birds of the British Isles, but I will see you soon. Thank you, BookTube.